I am too fat to love, sir, but I can have your child, the trembling black girl whispered to the towering giant rancher as moonlight cast shadows across the Montana wilderness, her words cutting through the night like a blade through silence. The ranch hands had always seen her as nothing more than kitchen help, too heavy, too dark, too broken for any man's affection. They whispered she'd die alone in the cookhouse, forgotten like yesterday's scraps. But the giant cowboy had returned from the city with his own wounds, his heart as empty as his vast ranch, desperately needing an heir to secure his legacy before rival forces could strip away everything he'd built. What neither realized was that her unexpected proposal would ignite a chain of events, threatening to expose the dark conspiracy already circling their land like vultures. Would two outcasts find salvation in each other's brokenness? Or would the hidden enemies watching from the shadows destroy them both before they could discover what they were truly worth? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The cast iron skillet crashed against the cabin wall as Hannah Thompson ducked. Beans scattered across the floorboards like scattered hopes. Heavy Hannah strikes again, Buck Morrison laughed from the doorway. The other ranch hands joined in. Their voices echoed through the Broken Arrow Ranch cookhouse. Hannah wiped her hands on her apron. She had heard worse. The Montana Territory in 1885 offered little kindness to women who looked like her. Large, black, alone. Maybe if you ate less of what you cooked, Slim Roberts added. More laughter followed. Hannah focused on the injured mare outside the window. The horse limped near the water trough. Blood seeped from a gash on her front leg. That mare's done for, Buck said, following her gaze. Boss'll put her down when he gets back. Hannah stepped outside. The ranch hands watched as she approached the wounded animal. She pulled dried herbs from her apron pocket. Comfrey and calendula, her grandmother's remedies. The mare calmed under her touch. Hannah cleaned the wound with gentle precision. She applied a poultice made from plants most folks ignored as weeds. What's that supposed to do? Slim asked. Heal her, Hannah replied simply. The men exchanged glances. They had seen Hannah work magic before. Sick cattle recovered under her care. Infected cuts healed without scars. But they preferred their mockery to their wonder. Thunder rumbled from the mountains. Dust clouds announced the boss's return. Caleb McGraw rode into the yard like a storm front. 6 feet and 8 inches of disappointment slouched in his saddle. His massive frame cast shadows across the ground. The ranch hands straightened. Even Buck's smirk faded. How'd it go in Denver, boss? Slim ventured. Caleb dismounted without answering. His boots hit the ground with finality. Hannah watched from beside the mare as he unsaddled his horse with mechanical movements. The answer lived in his shoulders, in the way he avoided their eyes. Another rejection. Another woman who saw only his size and rough edges, who heard his soft voice and gentle nature but saw only a brute. Back to work, Caleb muttered. The hands scattered. Hannah remained with the mare. She understood rejection's weight. How it settled in your bones like winter cold. Evening brought blessed quiet. Hannah finished her kitchen duties as stars appeared over the mountains. The ranch hands had retired to the bunkhouse with their bottles and their cruel jokes. She found Caleb by Silver Creek. He sat on a fallen log staring at the water. His massive hands hung between his knees like broken tools. She called me a mountain man, he said without looking up. Said I belonged in the wilderness, away from civilized folk. Hannah stepped closer. The creek babbled its eternal song. Said I was too rough, too big, too much everything wrong, and not enough anything right. I know that feeling, Hannah said quietly. Caleb looked at her then, really looked, past the cruel names and casual dismissals. He saw intelligence in her dark eyes, strength in her steady gaze. I need a son, he continued. This ranch needs an heir. My father built this place from nothing. Can't let it die with me. Hannah felt her heart beating faster. An idea formed, dangerous, practical, necessary. I am too fat to love, sir, she said carefully, but I can have your child. Caleb's eyes widened. The creak seemed louder suddenly. My grandmother delivered over 300 babies in Georgia, Hannah continued. She taught me everything: herbs for fertility, methods for safe birth, knowledge most doctors don't possess. She pulled a small leather journal from her apron, pages filled with careful drawings of medicinal plants, detailed notes in precise handwriting. I've been studying, learning, preparing for the day I might need these skills. Caleb took the journal. His large fingers turned pages with surprising gentleness. Diagrams of difficult births resolved safely, formulas for strengthening mothers and babies. This is remarkable, he whispered. I propose a business arrangement, Hannah said. I carry your child, ensure a safe birth using methods no one else knows. In exchange, you give me land, respect, a future beyond this kitchen. Caleb studied her face. No woman had ever spoken to him with such directness, such courage. The town won't accept this, he warned. The town already doesn't accept me, Hannah replied. At least this way, I gain something. Caleb closed the journal. He handed it back with ceremony. You're offering to save my legacy. I'm offering to create my own. Footsteps crunched on gravel behind them. Sheriff Clive Atwood emerged from the shadows. His badge caught moonlight like a predator's eye. Interesting conversation, he said coldly. Might want to keep such talk private. Folks in town got strong feelings about proper arrangements. Hannah felt ice in her veins. Caleb stood slowly. His height cast the sheriff in shadow. This is my land, Caleb said quietly. My business. For now, Atwood replied. He tipped his hat with mock courtesy. Evening, folks. The sheriff disappeared into darkness. His warning hung in the air like smoke. Hannah looked at Caleb, two outcasts standing at a crossroads. Behind them lay loneliness and failure. Ahead waited unknown dangers. Well? Hannah asked. Caleb extended his hand. Partners. They shook on it as the creek sang its ancient song. Neither knew they had just declared war on forces already circling like wolves in the night. Hannah's belongings fit in 2 worn carpet bags, 23 years of life reduced to spare dresses and her grandmother's medical journals. She carried them across the yard as ranch hands stared from the bunkhouse windows. The main house loomed before her like a cathedral, 3 stories of hand-hewn timber and ambitious dreams. She had scrubbed its floors countless times. Now she would live within its walls. Caleb opened the front door. Guest rooms upstairs, he said simply. No ceremony, no fanfare, just business. Word spread through Copper Ridge faster than wildfire. The black cook had moved into the main house. Tongues wagged at Miller's General Store. Whispers followed churchgoers down dusty streets. Hannah felt their stares during her weekly supply runs. Women clutched their children closer. Men spat into the dirt as she passed. Mrs. Eleanor Finch cornered her outside the pharmacy. Decent folk don't approve of your situation, the banker's wife hissed. Mark my words, girl. No good will come of this. Hannah kept walking. She had heard threats before. 3 weeks later, everything changed. Sarah Chen went into labor during the worst storm of the season. The Chinese woman lived on the outskirts of town with her minor husband. When complications arose, the town doctor refused to travel through the rain. Not for one of them, Doc Hartwell declared from his warm parlor. Lou Johnson rode hard to the Broken Arrow Ranch. Rain poured from his hat brim as he pounded on the door. Sarah's dying, he gasped to Hannah. Baby, too. You got to come. Hannah grabbed her medical bag. Caleb hitched the wagon without being asked. They rode through sheets of rain toward uncertain fate. The Chen cabin reeked of fear and approaching death. Sarah writhed on blood-soaked sheets. Her husband knelt beside the bed, praying in rapid Chinese. Hannah assessed the situation with clinical precision. The baby had turned wrong. Traditional delivery would kill them both. She opened her grandmother's journal to a page marked with careful drawings. External cephalic version, a technique her grandmother learned from a Cherokee medicine woman in Georgia. Hold her hands, Hannah instructed Mr. Chen. She placed her palms on Sarah's swollen belly. Her grandmother's voice echoed across decades. Feel for the baby's head, child. Find the strongest heartbeat. Follow the rhythm of life itself. Hannah's hands moved with inherited knowledge. Gentle pressure, careful rotation. She coaxed the baby into proper position through touch alone. Sarah's screams softened to exhausted whimpers. The dangerous bulge shifted correctly. 20 minutes later, a healthy son slid into Hannah's waiting hands. His lusty cries filled the cabin with joy. Sarah wept with relief. Mr. Chen pressed gold coins into Hannah's palm with trembling fingers. But the real payment came later. News of the miraculous birth spread through neighboring settlements. Women who had lost babies to incompetent doctors remembered Hannah's name. They whispered it to pregnant friends, passed it along trade routes. Within a month, desperate mothers traveled from 50 miles away. They arrived at the Broken Arrow Ranch with hope in their eyes and gold in their purses. Hannah delivered twins safely in the barn. She saved a bleeding mother using willow bark tea and pressure techniques. Each success built her reputation like stones in a foundation. Caleb watched from the house as Hannah worked. She moved with quiet authority among the women. Her gentle voice calmed fears. Her skilled hands prevented tragedies. "She's something special," Lou observed, joining Caleb on the porch. "I'm beginning to see that," Caleb replied. Hannah's medical practice grew beyond anyone's expectations. She charged fair prices, accepted payment in goods when families lacked cash. Her patients spread word of the miracle worker at Broken Arrow Ranch. But success bred resentment in town. Sheriff Atwood visited the ranch on a gray Tuesday morning. His deputy flanked him like a trained dog. "Lot of traffic coming through here lately," Atwood observed. His eyes swept the grounds where women waited for consultations. "Hannah's helping folks," Caleb said evenly. "Without proper medical training, without licenses, could be dangerous." Caleb's jaw tightened. "She's saved more lives than Doc Hartwell ever will." Atwood's smile carried winter's chill. Still, might be wise to discourage such activities, for everyone's safety. The threat hung between them like morning fog. That evening, Hannah sat at Caleb's kitchen table recording the day's treatments in her journal. Her careful handwriting documented each birth, each successful intervention. "Atwood's getting nervous," Caleb said, joining her with coffee. "Good," Hannah replied without looking up. "Nervous people make mistakes." She had begun to notice patterns in the sheriff's behavior. His sudden interest in successful minority families, his convenient absences when certain businesses faced mysterious troubles. Wade Thornfield had visited twice that week. The competing rancher circled Caleb's property like a buzzard. His offers grew more aggressive with each rejection. "Land's getting valuable," Thornfield had said during his latest visit. "Might not stay healthy for folks who don't fit the community standards." Hannah understood the subtext. Her presence made Caleb vulnerable. Her success threatened established power structures. But she also understood her grandmother's final lesson, the one whispered on her deathbed in a Georgia cabin. "Power belongs to those brave enough to claim it, child. Don't let them make you small." Hannah closed her journal as her hand moved instinctively to her belly. The first signs had appeared that morning. Subtle changes her trained eye recognized immediately. She carried Caleb's child now. Their arrangement had moved beyond business into biological reality. The stakes had just doubled for everyone involved. Hannah's morning sickness arrived like clockwork. She gripped the kitchen counter as waves of nausea rolled through her body. The pregnancy had taken hold exactly as her grandmother's journal predicted. Caleb found her there, pale and trembling. He poured cool water into a basin without being asked. "The arrangements worked," she said simply. His large hand stilled on the pump handle. The reality hit them both simultaneously. They had created life together, changed everything. "Are you well?" he asked. "I will be." But Hannah knew better than most how pregnancy could turn deadly. Especially for women like her. Women without proper medical care. Women the town doctor might refuse to treat. Doc Hartwell made his position clear during her first attempted visit. He barely looked up from his ledger when she entered his office. "Don't treat your kind," he muttered. "Find help elsewhere." Hannah walked out with her chin high. She had expected nothing less. The rejection stung differently now. Her life hung in the balance along with Caleb's child, two futures threatened by one man's prejudice. Wade Thornfield increased his visits to the ranch. The competing rancher brought legal papers and veiled threats. His eyes held predatory calculation as he watched Hannah's growing belly. "Interesting situation you've created," he told Caleb during one unwelcome visit. "Might complicate things when the bank reviews your loans." Caleb's hands clenched into fists. "Get off my land!" "Soon enough," Thornfield smiled coldly. "Soon enough." Sheriff Atwood accompanied Thornfield on his next visit. The lawman carried official-looking documents in a leather portfolio. "Got reports of improper cohabitation," Atwood announced. "Moral violations that could affect property ownership." Hannah emerged from the house before Caleb could respond. Her pregnancy showed clearly now at 5 months along. "What law exactly are we breaking?" she asked. Atwood's eyes narrowed. "Public decency statutes. Codes about proper family arrangements." "Show me the specific statute." The sheriff's confidence wavered. Hannah had clearly done her research. "Don't need to explain the law to someone like you. Someone like me who can read legal documents better than most." Hannah produced a thick book from behind her back. Montana Territory Legal Code, borrowed from Lou Johnson's collection. Atwood and Thornfield exchanged glances. They had underestimated their opponent. "This isn't over," Atwood warned before riding away. Hannah's medical practice continued growing despite mounting pressure. Women arrived daily seeking her expertise. Each successful delivery strengthened her reputation and their enemies' desperation. But success came with a price. Someone had been watching her patients, following them home. Several families reported strange visitors asking questions about their interactions with the ranch. Lou Johnson brought disturbing news during one of his visits. He had been researching property records in the territorial capital. "Found something interesting," he told Hannah privately. 3 other successful colored families lost their land in the past 2 years, all under suspicious circumstances. "What kind of circumstances?" "Sudden legal troubles, mysterious debts, property seized for unpaid taxes that were never actually owed." Hannah felt ice forming in her stomach. "Who bought the land?" "Shell companies. All trace back to the same source eventually." "Thornfield." Lou nodded grimly. "He's been systematically targeting successful minorities, using Atwood to provide legal cover." The pattern became clear. Hannah's medical success and pregnancy had marked both her and Caleb for elimination. They were fighting a coordinated conspiracy, not random prejudice. Hannah's labor pains began during an October thunderstorm. Lightning split the sky as contractions gripped her body with increasing intensity. Caleb rode desperately toward town for Doc Hartwell. The doctor refused to come despite the offered gold. "Not my problem," Hartwell stated from his dry office. Caleb returned empty-handed to find Hannah directing Lou through emergency preparations. She had anticipated this moment, planned for abandonment by the medical establishment. "Sterilize the instruments in boiling water," she instructed through gritted teeth. "Tear the sheets into strips. Prepare the herbal tinctures exactly as marked in my journal." Her grandmother's voice guided her through the early stages. Breathing techniques learned from Cherokee medicine women. Pressure points that eased pain naturally. But complications arose as night deepened. The baby had turned wrong during labor. Hannah faced the same dangerous situation that killed countless mothers. She needed to perform the external version technique on herself, an almost impossible feat requiring precise touch and perfect timing. "I can't reach properly," she gasped to Lou. "You have to do exactly what I say." Lou's hands shook as Hannah guided him through the procedure. Outside, Sheriff Atwood and Wade Thornfield approached through the storm with final legal papers. They had timed their arrival perfectly. Hannah at her most vulnerable, Caleb desperate and distracted, the perfect moment to seize everything. Hannah heard their horses through the rain, saw lantern light approaching the house. She made a choice that would define everyone's future. "Lou," she whispered urgently. Get the evidence folder from my medical bag, the papers we gathered about their land scheme. Now? Lou stared at her incredulously. Now. Hannah summoned strength from generations of women who had survived impossible situations. Her grandmother delivering babies in slave quarters, great-grandmother healing families in secret. She would deliver this child herself, expose the conspiracy threatening them, prove her worth to a community that had always underestimated her intelligence. Thunder crashed overhead as Atwood pounded on the door. Hannah smiled through her pain. They had no idea what they were about to face. The real battle was just beginning. Hannah gripped the bedsheets as another contraction peaked. Through the window, she watched Sheriff Atwood and Wade Thornfield dismount in the rain. Their lanterns cast dancing shadows across the muddy yard. "They're here for the ranch," she gasped to Lou. "Get the evidence folder now." Lou fumbled through Hannah's medical bag with trembling hands. Inside lay months of careful documentation. Property records, financial transactions, a web of corruption that connected every suspicious land seizure in the territory. The front door rattled under heavy fists. Caleb's voice carried from downstairs as he confronted the intruders. "You got no business here tonight," Caleb said firmly. "Got legal papers that say otherwise," Atwood replied. "Moral violation charges, property seizure for unpaid debts." Hannah knew those debts were fabricated, the same phantom obligations that had destroyed 3 other families. She forced herself to focus through the pain. "Lou, help me sit up," she whispered. "I need to reach the baby properly." Her hands found her swollen belly. The child had turned sideways during labor, creating a potentially fatal situation. Hannah closed her eyes and felt for the tiny heartbeat. Her grandmother's voice echoed across generations. "Trust your hands, child. They know the way." Hannah guided Lou through the external version technique while voices grew louder downstairs. Gentle pressure, careful rotation. She coaxed her baby into the correct position through sheer determination. The child shifted. Hannah felt the unmistakable change as her daughter moved into proper alignment. Heavy footsteps climbed the stairs. Atwood and Thornfield had pushed past Caleb. "Time to end this charade," Thornfield announced, entering the bedroom. He stopped short at the scene before him. Hannah sat propped against pillows, her grandmother's journal open beside her. Lou held the evidence folder in his shaking hands. Legal documents spilled across the bed like accusations. "Interesting timing," Hannah said between contractions. "Coming to steal a ranch while a woman gives birth." Atwood's hand moved to his weapon. "You got no right to make accusations." "I got every right." Hannah gestured to the scattered papers. "Especially when I can prove everything." Thornfield's eyes fixed on the documents. He recognized his own signatures on forged debt certificates, bank transactions that traced directly to his accounts. "Where did you get those?" he demanded. "Territorial Records Office," Lou answered, finding his courage. "Public documents. Anyone can access them if they know where to look." Hannah had spent months teaching Lou how to research legal records. Together, they had uncovered the systematic targeting of successful minority families. Each case followed the same pattern: fabricated debts, forced sales, property transferred to Thornfield's shell companies. "You can't prove anything," Atwood blustered, but uncertainty crept into his voice. Hannah smiled through her pain. "Can't I? Lou, show them document 17. Lou held up a bank transfer record. Thornfield's name appeared clearly as the recipient of funds from the sheriff's office. Payment for services rendered. "That's taken out of context," Thornfield protested. "Context like bribing a sheriff to falsify legal documents?" Hannah asked. Another contraction gripped her, but she maintained her composure. "Or context like using law enforcement to steal land from families who couldn't fight back?" Caleb appeared in the doorway behind the 2 men. His massive frame blocked their exit route. "Heard enough," he said quietly. "Think it's time you both left." Atwood reached for his gun. "We got legal authority here." "No." Hannah's voice carried absolute certainty. "You have corruption masquerading as authority. Lou, show them document 23. This paper made all three men freeze, a federal complaint form already filled out and notarized. Lou had filed it with territorial authorities 3 days earlier. Federal marshals received copies of everything, Hannah explained. They're reviewing the case as we speak. Thornfield's face went pale. Federal involvement meant serious consequences. Prison time. Loss of everything he had stolen. "You're bluffing," he said weakly. Hannah gestured to a telegram on the nightstand. Official territorial seal clearly visible. "Marshal Davidson arrives tomorrow morning," she read aloud. "Investigation begins immediately upon arrival." The room fell silent except for rain against the windows. Hannah felt another contraction building, stronger than the others. "Lou, I need you to prepare for the birth," she said calmly. "These gentlemen need to leave now." Atwood and Thornfield exchanged desperate glances. Their carefully constructed scheme was collapsing around them. Years of systematic theft exposed by a pregnant woman they had underestimated. "This isn't over," Atwood threatened, but his voice lacked conviction. "Yes, it is," Caleb replied. He stepped aside just enough to let them pass. "Don't come back." The corrupt duo fled into the storm, their plans ruined by Hannah's intelligence and preparation. Hannah felt her body preparing for the final stage of labor. Her daughter was ready to enter the world. The timing seemed perfect somehow. New life emerging as old corruption died. "Lou, help me with the breathing technique," she instructed. "Just like I taught you." Caleb knelt beside the bed, his large hand covering hers. "You did it," he said softly. "You saved everything." Hannah smiled as another contraction peaked. "We saved everything. All of us together." Through the window, she watched Atwood and Thornfield disappear into the darkness. They would face justice soon enough. Federal marshals didn't tolerate corruption in their territories. But first, Hannah had a daughter to deliver. A future to birth into a world she had just made safer and more just. The real victory was still coming. Hannah's daughter entered the world with a lusty cry that cut through the storm like triumph itself. The baby's healthy wails filled the room as Hannah cradled her against her chest. "She's perfect," Caleb whispered, his massive hands trembling as he touched his daughter's tiny fingers. Lou wiped tears from his eyes as he cleaned the medical instruments. "Never seen anything like what you just did, Hannah. Delivered a baby and delivered justice all at once." Hannah smiled through her exhaustion. Her grandmother's voice seemed to whisper approval across the generations. 300 babies delivered safely, and now one more to continue the legacy. Dawn broke clear and bright. The storm had washed the air clean, leaving everything fresh and new. Hannah sat propped against pillows, nursing her daughter while watching the sunrise paint the mountains gold. Hoofbeats announced the arrival of Marshal Davidson. The federal officer rode into the yard with 2 deputies, their badges gleaming in the morning light. Caleb met them at the door with the evidence folder Lou had organized. Property records, bank transfers, forged documents. Everything needed to prove the conspiracy that had threatened so many families. "Impressive work," Marshal Davidson said after reviewing the papers. "This level of systematic corruption requires federal intervention." Within hours, Atwood and Thornfield were in custody. The corrupt sheriff's badge was stripped away as he was led to the territorial jail in shackles. Thornfield's property empire crumbled as federal agents seized his assets. Word of their arrest spread through Copper Ridge like wildfire. Families who had lost their land to the scheme learned they would receive compensation. Justice had finally arrived in Montana territory. Hannah's medical reputation soared even higher. The woman who had exposed corruption while delivering her own child became legend. Pregnant mothers traveled from 3 territories seeking her expertise. Mrs. Eleanor Finch arrived at the ranch 2 weeks later. The banker's wife who had once threatened Hannah now stood hat in hand at the front door. "My daughter's with child," she said quietly, "having difficulties. Doc Hartwell says there's nothing he can do." Hannah received her former tormentor with grace. Professional duty outweighed personal grievances. She saved both Mrs. Finch's daughter and grandchild using techniques the town doctor had never learned. The banker's wife left $50 and a formal apology. More importantly, she spread word throughout Copper Ridge's social circles. Hannah Thompson was a miracle worker worthy of respect. Caleb watched Hannah work with growing admiration. She moved through their home with quiet authority, caring for patients while raising their daughter. Her intelligence and compassion transformed everyone she touched. "Marry me," he said one evening as they sat on the porch watching sunset paint the sky. Hannah looked up from feeding their daughter. "Our arrangement was for business purposes." "This isn't business anymore," Caleb replied. "This is love." Hannah studied his face. The giant rancher who had once seemed so intimidating now showed only tenderness and respect. He valued her mind as much as her medical skills. "Yes," she said simply. They married in the ranch's main room with Lou officiating. Sarah Chen and her husband attended, along with dozen other families Hannah had helped. Even former skeptics from town came to witness the ceremony. The federal government appointed a new sheriff to replace the corrupt Atwood. Sheriff Maria Santos arrived from California with a reputation for fairness and integrity. Her first official act was ensuring equal protection for all territorial residents. Hannah established the Broken Arrow medical practice as a formal business. Lou managed the administrative duties while Hannah focused on patient care. They charged fair rates and accepted payment in goods when families lacked cash. The practice grew beyond anyone's expectations. Hannah trained other women in basic medical techniques, creating a network of midwives across the territory. Her grandmother's knowledge spread like seeds on fertile ground. Wade Thornfield's seized properties were sold at federal auction. Caleb purchased several parcels at fair market prices, expanding the Broken Arrow Ranch into a legitimate empire built on honest work rather than theft. The couple established a medical school for women on their property. Hannah taught courses in midwifery, herbal medicine, and emergency care. Students came from across the Western Territories to learn from the woman who had revolutionized frontier healthcare. Hannah's daughter, Grace, grew strong and healthy under her parents' loving care. She showed early signs of inheriting both her mother's intelligence and her father's gentle strength. The McGraw family became pillars of their community. Hannah's medical practice saved countless lives, while Caleb's ranch provided honest employment for dozens of workers. They proved that success built on integrity lasted longer than wealth stolen through corruption. 1 year after Grace's dramatic birth, Hannah stood in their medical facility watching Lou teach a class of aspiring midwives. Her grandmother's techniques were being passed to a new generation of healers. Caleb joined her in the doorway, Grace balanced on his massive shoulders. "Any regrets?" he asked quietly. Hannah considered the question seriously. She thought of the cruel names and daily humiliations she had endured, the loneliness and self-doubt that had once defined her existence. "None," she replied with absolute certainty. She had transformed from someone who believed she was too fat to love into a respected doctor, devoted wife, and loving mother. Her worth had never been determined by others' opinions, but by her own skills, intelligence, and character. The woman who had once served beans to mockery now served justice to her community. That seemed like a fair trade. 2 years had passed since Grace's dramatic birth. The Broken Arrow Ranch stretched across the Montana horizon like a testament to honest ambition. Hannah stood on the wraparound porch of their expanded home, watching her daughter take her first tentative steps across the wooden planks. Grace McGraw possessed her father's sturdy build and her mother's determined spirit. At 18 months, she already showed signs of the intelligence that would define the McGraw legacy. The medical school Hannah had established occupied 3 new buildings on the ranch property. 24 women from across the Western Territories studied advanced midwifery and herbal medicine under her guidance. Her grandmother's knowledge lived on through each graduated student. Lou Johnson approached from the main classroom building carrying enrollment applications. His administrative skills had transformed Hannah's informal practice into a respected institution. 47 new applications this month, he reported with satisfaction. Women coming from as far as California and Texas. Hannah smiled as she watched her students practice delivery techniques on specially designed training models. Each would return home equipped to save lives in remote settlements where doctors feared to travel. The corruption trial of Atwood and Thornfield had concluded 6 months earlier. Both men received lengthy federal prison sentences for their systematic land theft scheme. Their convictions sent a clear message across the territories about the consequences of exploiting vulnerable families. 3 families who had lost property to the scheme received full compensation from federal courts. The Chen family used their settlement to open a successful trading post. Other victims invested in legitimate businesses, rebuilding their lives on foundations of justice rather than charity. Sheriff Maria Santos had proven an excellent replacement for the corrupt Atwood. Her fair enforcement of territorial law earned respect from all communities. She often consulted Hannah on cases involving domestic violence or child welfare, recognizing her unique insights into family dynamics. Caleb emerged from the ranch office where he had been reviewing expansion plans with their foreman. The Broken Arrow Ranch now employed 32 workers year-round, making it one of the territory's largest legitimate operations. Denver investors want to discuss a cattle contract, he told Hannah. Seems our reputation for honest dealing has spread to the big city. Hannah nodded approvingly. Their success attracted attention from reputable businessmen rather than corrupt schemers. Fair dealing and quality work had built something sustainable. The couple had received an unexpected visitor the previous week. Doc Hartwell arrived at their door with his medical bag and a formal apology. The aging physician requested permission to observe Hannah's techniques. Been doctoring for 30 years, he had admitted quietly. Never seen success rates like yours. Maybe an old dog can learn new tricks. Hannah accepted his request with grace. She demonstrated her grandmother's delivery methods and herbal formulations while he took careful notes. Professional knowledge belonged to all healers, regardless of past conflicts. Hartwell left with renewed enthusiasm for his practice and deep respect for Hannah's abilities. He began referring difficult cases to her medical school, acknowledging superior expertise without wounded pride. The transformation extended beyond professional recognition. Social attitudes in Copper Ridge had shifted dramatically as Hannah's contributions became undeniable. Women who once crossed streets to avoid her now sought her advice on family matters. Mrs. Eleanor Finch had become an unlikely ally. The banker's wife organized fundraising events for the medical school and advocated for Hannah's inclusion in community leadership roles. Gratitude for her daughter's life had overcome decades of ingrained prejudice. Hannah's patient roster included families from every social stratum. Ranch owners and shopkeepers, miners and farmers all received the same quality care regardless of their ability to pay. Her sliding fee scale ensured that poverty never prevented access to medical treatment. Grace toddled across the porch into her mother's arms, babbling in the complex language only children understood. Hannah lifted her daughter, marveling at the miracle of new life that had changed everything for their family. Caleb joined them at the porch railing, his massive arm encircling both wife and daughter. The 3 formed a portrait of contentment against the backdrop of Montana's endless sky. "Remember what you said that night by the creek?" Caleb asked softly. "About being too fat to love?" Hannah considered the memory carefully. That desperate woman seemed like someone from another lifetime, someone who had accepted others' cruel definitions of her worth. "I was wrong," she replied simply. "I wasn't too fat to love. I was too valuable for small minds to understand." Her journey from kitchen servant to respected healer proved that worth came from character and ability rather than appearance or social status. The woman who had once served beans to mockery now served justice to her community. The medical school's evening bell chimed across the ranch grounds. Students gathered for their final lecture of the day, eager to absorb knowledge that would save lives across the frontier. Hannah had created something larger than personal success. Her grandmother's wisdom would spread through dozens of communities as each graduate established practices in their home territories. The healing knowledge of enslaved women would touch thousands of lives through this growing network. Grace pointed toward the setting sun and spoke her first clear word. "Mama." Hannah's heart swelled with joy. Her daughter would grow up in a world where intelligence and skill mattered more than prejudice. where a woman's worth was measured by her contributions rather than others' limitations. The giant rancher and the determined healer watched darkness settle over their mountain kingdom. Tomorrow would bring new patients, new students, new opportunities to serve their community. They had built something lasting from the ashes of corruption and cruelty. Love had triumphed over prejudice, justice had defeated exploitation, hope had overcome despair. The little girl who once believed she was too fat to love now held everything she had ever dreamed of earning.